final positional rankings video for the 2024 class. Today we're going to be breaking down safeties. I've got 28 players graded. Comparing this position group to the rest of the class, I would say it's about average. There isn't a lot of top 50 talent, but in the middle rounds, I actually think there's a lot of potential starters here. My 28th ranked safety is Patrick McMorris out of California. He has good size and he's a physical player, but there are some real athletic limitations. He doesn't have the speed or overall movement skills to play free safety. I think he's exclusively a box safety in the NFL. If he was slightly bigger, I'd actually rather him move to linebacker. But yeah, he's kind of a stiff, plodding box safety, not that instinctive in coverage, and he's a really bad tackler as well. Next up, we've got Marcus Banks out of Mississippi State. He's honestly built more like a corner, 6 foot 190, 29-inch arms is 0 percentile, but he ran a 4.45, had pretty good numbers in the other drills. He has the athletic traits to play man coverage. He has really good speed to cover vertical routes. He can stick with wheel routes from the slot. In man coverage, he is more grabby than he needs to be. You'd like him to trust his footwork a little bit more, but I do think he can stick with receivers a lot more effectively than most safeties can. He only has 1 year of starting experience, and it's pretty obvious when you watch him play zone coverage. He's slow to process and connect to vertical assignments. You see that with the touchdown that he gave up against Auburn. Just let a slot fade go completely uncovered into the end zone. So the zone coverage and play recognition is still a work in progress, and then his lack of size just limits his potential so much. He's probably the worst tackler in this class. Having such short arms really limits his margin for error, and he just takes wild angles into tackle attempts. He's got physical limitations as a run defender. He'll get bodied at the catch point. I have a hard time seeing Marcus Banks play safety in the NFL, and I'm not sure he really has the traits that you covet for a cornerback. My 26th ranked safety is Richardson out of Texas A&M, one of the most experienced players in this class, 3,245 career snaps. He's big, slow, and stiff, so that just kind of caps what he can be in the NFL. Really good size at 6'1", 210 pounds, 32-inch arms. He's a physical run defender. He's a good tackler close to the line of scrimmage, 4 career forced fumbles, but there's just no recovery speed, range on the back end. He doesn't have the explosive click and close to make plays on the ball. He's not a fluid enough athlete to play man coverage. If you watch the LSU game, Malik Neighbors just had him in a blender. He's a fine college player. I just don't really see NFL upside with him. Next safety is Akeem Dent out of Florida State, another very experienced player, 2,300 career snaps. He's got good speed and acceleration, average size, but I think overall he has the physical makeup and athletic traits of a third safety potentially. He's just very slow to read routes and break on the football over the middle of the field. He only has 1 career interception. A lot of times interception numbers can be misleading, but in this case it really does speak to his lack of anticipation and putting himself in position to make plays. When he's in the box, he's a physical run defender and a solid tackler, but out in open space as the last line of defense, he has a hard time redirecting his pursuit angles when he's crashing downhill. A lot of diving tackle attempts. I don't really trust him to wrap up consistently in the NFL. I've got TCU safety Mark Perry at 24. He's got legitimate track speed, fastest 40-yard dash in this class at 4.4 flat. When he's locked in, he can keep up with any receiver down the field. The problem is he has really spotty coverage awareness and attention to detail. There's a lot of plays where he'll just be so late to recognize the receiver declaring vertically and he'll get stacked down the sideline. He doesn't add much as a run defender. He's a hard hitter at the 2nd and 3rd level, but not very aggressive in run support. And even though he has the speed for man coverage, he doesn't have the fluidity at all. He's very much a linear athlete. He has a hard time staying connected with breaks. He doesn't process that quickly in zone coverage. So I was really not a fan of Mark Perry's tape outside of the fact that he can run fast at 213 pounds, but he has a lot more upside than the guys we've talked about up to this point, so definitely worth a shot as a priority free agent. And then safety 23 is going to be Logan Jr. out of Kansas. He has a ton of experience, a lot of ball production, 2,800 career snaps. He had 6 pass breakups and an interception last season and 4 career forced fumbles. He's really instinctive breaking on routes over the middle of the field. He's not a great athlete, but he has the anticipation to create opportunities for himself. Now, his athletic testing was some of the worst in this class. He didn't have a single drill that was above 22nd percentile. And like I said, he's not an elite athlete on tape, but I think he's way closer to average than his pro day numbers would suggest. He's able to win pursuit angles to the edge, chase down ball carriers from the backside of the play. He doesn't have the high-end traits where there's a ton of upside, but he's at least athletic enough to get where he's trying to go. The one place you do see athletic limitations is with lateral fluidity. He's just not twitchy enough to play man coverage in the NFL, and he makes it worse by panicking with his feet and getting himself out of position. And then as a run defender, he's not lacking for physicality. If he's on a run blitz or he's lined up close to the line of scrimmage, he's really aggressive in run support. But when it comes to fitting the run from depth, he has really poor awareness and gap integrity. He's extremely passive engaging with blocks. He gets stuck to blocks at the second level. So he's an interesting player, but I think probably someone that was a lot better in college than they're going to be in the NFL. My 22nd ranked safety is Sione Vaki out of Utah. He's 5'11", 210 pounds with first percentile arm length. He's kind of built like a running back, and in college that was actually his best position. I wasn't a big fan of his safety tape, but as a runner and a receiver, he's extremely dynamic with the ball in his hands. They only really used him in a few games, but he averaged 7.5 yards per carry and 7.81 yards per route run. He had 11 receptions for 203 receiving yards, 317 rushing yards, and 2 touchdowns. That's where I would play him in the NFL, and I think he also can add value with the new kick return rules, but evaluating him as a safety, it's just a tough sell for me. He has really good straight line speed and closing burst. He has bad intentions driving downhill. He's a run and hit safety. When he sees it, if he can just take a straight path to the ball, he is really disruptive. The problem is he doesn't see it often enough to actually make that much of an impact. You can tell that he's new to the position. He just doesn't have the field vision and route recognition to get there in time. He'll get manipulated by misdirection and trick plays, so he just doesn't have the technical polish or experience to really weaponize his straight line athleticism. And then he's really lacking in lateral fluidity. He has an awkward back pedal, clunky changing directions, and transitioning out of coverage. He had some bad missed tackles where you could also see the hip tightness breaking down in open space. I just think Vaki's a player that needs a ton of development, and the finished product I don't really see as a quality starter. At safety 21, I've got Jaylen Carli out of Missouri, and this is a player that I think should probably move to linebacker. He has elite size for a safety, almost 6'3", 227 pounds with over 34-inch arms, and his straight line athleticism at that size was actually pretty impressive. He ran a 4.5 flat in the 40, 125-inch broad. If he's just starting the play with 15 yards of depth and he needs to chase like a drag route across the field, he can absolutely do that. He has good build-up speed. He can plant and drive on hole shots pretty quickly, but he's definitely the stiffest player in this class, and you see that show up in so many areas of his game. He doesn't have the change of direction skills for man coverage. Receivers just separate out of their breaks instantly. He has enough speed when he's crashing downhill, but if he has to open up his hips and run vertically, it takes him so long to gear up to that top speed. But the main area that his stiffness shows up is as a tackler. When he breaks down in open space, he's just permanently rooted into the ground. There's so many plays on tape where he comes to balance as a tackler in the open field. The ball carrier just makes a simple lateral cut, and he does not have the short area explosiveness to mirror that. So there's a ton of missed tackles on his tape, and they all seem to result in big plays for the offense. He does have elite ball skills. His length gives him such an advantage at the catch point. He can rake the ball out even if he's given up a step of separation, and he's really accurate with his hands. And he's got 9 interceptions the last 3 seasons. He just looks natural high pointing the ball deep down the field, but his awareness and route recognition was very inconsistent, which results in him ultimately being a boom bust player. He gave up 5 touchdowns in 2023, 10 for his career. His downhill aggressiveness will leave him susceptible to play action. You saw that with the touchdown he gave up against Kansas State on the goal line. He doesn't do a great job squeezing routes in zone coverage. He's lacking spatial awareness over the middle of the field. I think Carli is a player that needs to move to linebacker, but even there, I still worry about him breaking down in open space and being a secure tackler. My 20th ranked safety is Tyler Owens out of Texas Tech. he's a rare athlete, but a complete project as far as playing safety. He's over 6'2", 216 pounds, about 33.5-inch arms. His broad jump was 1 inch short of setting the combine record for any position, 146 inches, and he had a 41-inch vertical as well, which is 94th percentile. He got injured about 15 yards into his 40-yard dash, so we didn't get any other combine testing for him, but watching the beginning of that run, he was flying out of his stance. I think he would have had a really good 40 time. He's been tracked at 23 miles an hour on the GPS. To give you some context, if we just plug in a 4.40 40-yard dash for Tyler Owens, which I think is absolutely realistic, his athletic score would be 100.0, and that's compared to every player in combine history. The only other player with a 100 athletic score is Anthony Richardson last year. Now, the change of direction skills would probably bring that down to like a 94, 95, but still a rare linear athlete. He's another player like Mark Perry from TCU that has the speed to effortlessly run with receivers down the field, but he's so late to react to the route and open his hips up, he ends up getting beat deep a lot more often than you'd expect. He has the closing burst and long strides to make plays to the sideline as a center fielder, but there's really only a couple examples of that on tape because he just doesn't process the game quickly enough to put himself in position. His length allows him to cast a really wide net as a tackler. He's got an expanded radius of impact, but he takes extremely direct tackling angles and doesn't really anticipate the ball carrier to flow outside, so he leaves a wide open runway for them to bend it to the sideline. So in zone coverage, he's raw but has theoretical upside, but in man coverage, I do think he's very limited. He isn't able to sharply change directions to mirror route breaks, and he doesn't read the receiver's hips to help himself anticipate the break. I think his upside defensively is purely as a center fielding free safety. I do think that just being big and fast gives him value as a special teams player, which makes him worth a late day 3 pick, but for a 5th-year senior with as much development as he needs, it's a pure lottery ticket, and I don't think the odds are that great. And then another lottery ticket is Millard Bradford out of TCU, who goes by Nook Bradford. He has elite range to be a free safety in a single high scheme. He ran a 4.42 in the 40-yard dash, 38.5-inch vertical. He has a smooth back pedal. He's got the speed to move sideline to sideline, and he's really explosive out of his breaks. Even though he does need a lot of development, it's not pure theoretical upside. You actually see him make plays as a free safety. He has decent anticipation. He takes good angles to the ball. If you just need someone to close in on a deep corner, I think Nook Bradford can do that from day one. His problem is pretty much every other area of the field. He has a hard time processing intermediate route combos over the middle. He'll bite on eye candy underneath and let routes get behind him. And he already has almost 2,200 career snaps. He's going to turn 25 as a rookie. If an older player with a ton of experience still needs this much development from a play recognition standpoint, I just have a hard time seeing them reaching their upside in the NFL. And then he also misses a lot of tackles. He had a 20% missed tackle rate this past season. He does have 562 career special team snaps, which would normally be a positive, but he's missed as many tackles as he's made in special teams. He has 8 career missed tackles and 8 career tackles. So it's great that he has that experience, but I'm not sure he's a net positive in that phase. Moving on from the pure upside dart throws to some more low ceiling, high floor type of prospects, we've got Trey Taylor out of Air Force at safety 18. I think he's a box safety only in the NFL, but he does a lot of things at a really high level. He has good size and length. He actually tested really well in every drill except the 40-yard dash. He's an excellent run defender. He's quick to diagnose. He's got the size to play off of blocks. He's completely unfazed by eye candy, reverses, motions. He just reads his keys, stays home, and makes the play. He was really productive in pass coverage this past season, 3 interceptions, 4 pass breakups. As a robber safety, he has really good anticipation, breaking on routes over the middle. He can be physical at the line of scrimmage and man up tight ends down the seam. And in off-man coverage, he actually has really fluid hips at his size, so he can make smooth lateral transitions and stick with route breaks. He does have some speed limitations, so that kind of inhibits him from really making plays as a free safety. And there will be some man coverage matchups where he'll just be at an inherent disadvantage disadvantage. Even though he had pretty good jumps, I didn't think he was that explosive out of a standstill or a back pedal. I didn't think he closed space very quickly from off man. And then he's a really good special teams player as well. Punt coverage, field goal block. He blocked an extra point this year against Wyoming. So I think Trey Taylor projects as most likely a solid third box safety. And then a really underrated and under-discussed player in this class is Omar Brown out of Nebraska. I was really impressed with his tape, and Lance Zierlein is the only person that I've even seen mention him. The first thing that sticks out with Omar Brown is he's one of the best safeties in this class at defending screens. He just obliterates the blocking scheme, either makes the tackle at the line of scrimmage or rips the ball out of the receiver's hands. He had 2 forced fumbles this past season on wide receiver screens. I thought he was a slightly better athlete than his testing would suggest, mainly when it comes to the explosiveness drills, but he ran a decent 40-yard dash, 4.53. He's not an elite athlete, but he has enough speed to chase down perimeter runs. He's got solid plant and drive explosiveness. He's very disciplined in coverage. He hasn't allowed a touchdown since his freshman year in 2019. There's very few examples of him getting manipulated out of position by play action or letting a delayed route leak behind him. Really, the one inconsistency with Omar Brown in the passing game is off coverage. Now, he's flashed the movement skills and light footwork to mirror routes and break on the pass. He had an interception on a deep out against Minnesota that's one of the better interceptions from anyone in this class. But for the most part, he's very unbalanced and panicky at the top of the route. He doesn't do a great job keying the receiver's hips. He'll get stemmed off balance. Overall, he just allows a lot of separation out of the break, but I do think it's more of a technical issue than an athletic limitation. My 16th ranked safety is Evan Williams out of Oregon. Undersized safety with pretty short arms and a below average 40-yard dash, 4.59, but he does have some elite testing numbers that I think really translate to what shows up on film. An 89th percentile short shuttle, 92nd percentile vertical jump. He has loose hips, lateral agility, and outstanding closing burst. The recovery speed will be somewhat of a limitation. I think you've got to protect him from certain man coverage matchups, and he's not someone that's going to be a sideline to sideline center fielder, but he can play off man. He can connect to intermediate route breaks. Within 20 yards, he's got the side to side quickness to bounce from route to route in zone coverage. As more of a third safety type with limited deep coverage responsibilities, I actually think he can add a lot of value to your defense. He does a really good job playing routes as a backside safety. He's got field vision to see the entire route distribution, but he had a lot of issues just connecting to routes in quarters coverage. If he was lined up over the slot and they ran like a deep over, he'd be so passive closing that space, and he gave him so much room to operate. I saw 2 times on tape where the offense ran kind of a vertical switch concept and he lost track of his assignment down the field. I think for the role you're projecting Evan Williams to play, you want him to be a lot more consistent with his play diagnosis. He doesn't really play the ball that well. He hasn't had a lot of production. There was a play towards the end of the Washington game where he had an interception. He just couldn't locate the football. So I don't really see starter upside. That's why he's a 6th round grade, but there's enough that he does well that I think in certain schemes he could carve out a role as a third safety. My 15th ranked safety is Dejon Anthony out of Ole Miss. He's a converted cornerback with only 1 year of experience at safety, so it's a little bit rough around the edges, but that's to be expected. And he played more of a hybrid slot safety star type of role in Ole Miss's defense. He had a ton of man coverage reps from the slot, and as a former corner, that was unsurprisingly where he was at his best. His top speed is just adequate, 4.53 in the 40-yard dash. He never just gets cooked off the line of scrimmage, but he doesn't have the elite recovery speed to make up for coverage mistakes. He does have a very fluid open and sprint mechanism. There's not a lot of stall when he's turning his hips and accelerating. He has long arms, 32.5 inches, so he can actually play press man and be pretty disruptive at the line of scrimmage. And against tight ends, he can actually kind of erase them from the game. He had probably 8 to 10 man coverage reps on Brock Bowers in week 11, and Bowers could not separate from him. But like I said, the speed isn't top tiers, so when he's matched up with a faster NFL caliber receiver, he will allow a step or two of separation. He gave up a touchdown on a slot fade to Brian Thomas Jr. He got beat by Anais Smith on a seam in the red zone. On both of those plays, he wasn't more than a step behind, but there is a reason that he moved from cornerback to safety. He also has really impressive lateral twitch and foot speed to mirror routes and man coverage, and then his length and natural ball skills make him really effective at the catch point. You would like him to fill out his frame a little bit so he can play physical man coverage against tight ends and hold up in the run game, but even though he's only 195 pounds, he's an absolute maniac as a tackler. I'm sure you've seen those videos of Jaden Daniels just getting wrecked in the open field. Half of those those are thanks to Dejon Anthony. He's an absolutely violent hitter. It does result in some penalties, but overall you like to see that play demeanor. So right now I really like Dejon Anthony as a man coverage matchup weapon, as kind of a hybrid safety, but he's still working out the nuances of zone coverage, and it's a complete work in progress at this point. He doesn't really anticipate how the offense is trying to attack him with high lows. He'll let smash concepts go over his head. He struggles to read out full field passing concepts, and then when he's playing as more of a hook zone defender, he'll misjudge angles when he's trying to sink and connect to deeper routes. So if you throw a hitch route in front of him, he attaches to that, and then you've got a deep over coming behind him. He's just really clunky trying to disengage and find the proper angle to pick up that route. So unless you've got him in just a pure man coverage role, he does need a lot of development, but I think he has high upside to become a quality starter at safety if he can improve those zone coverage instincts. Next up, we've got Bo Braid out of Maryland. He's a tone setter over the middle of the field. He's a violent tackler, 3 career forced fumbles. He's got the stopping power to stand someone up at the goal line. He almost always falls through his tackling target, and he has really good anticipation of in-breaking routes, especially as a robber safety. If he's just a backside safety pouncing on dig routes, he has the instincts to be a really productive player. And for as aggressive and physical as he is, he's actually really controlled and composed at the catch point. He didn't have a single penalty last year. He breaks at full speed, but once he gets there, he's really careful to play the ball and not make unnecessary contact with the receiver. But pretty much all of his weaknesses come back to athletic limitations. He's 6 foot, 203 pounds with 31-inch arms, which is average size, but he ran a 4.65 in the 40-yard dash, which is 15th percentile. His vertical was 32.5 inches. Really, most of his pro day testing was below average. He doesn't have very good recovery speed and definitely doesn't have the range to be a free safety. When he is forced to play in the middle of the field, he just doesn't have the second gear to make plays at the sideline. His straight line speed downhill is okay, but he just can't open up his hips and keep pace with deep threats. If he's in off coverage and the receiver declares vertically, he's automatically grabbing the jersey because he knows he can't keep up with him. And then he also has major limitations in man coverage. He doesn't have very good short area explosiveness. When he's trying to break from off coverage, his feet get outside of his frame and he'll stumble out of his break. So there's some good moments on tape. He's just really a limited athlete across the board. And then, as is the case with most of these aggressive hard hitters, he takes extreme pursuit angles and can't really come to balance and redirect if the running back cuts back. So there's a lot of just whiffs in open space as the last line of defense. My 13th ranked safety is Josh Proctor out of Ohio State, and he probably has the best zone coverage instincts of anyone in this class. He's a 6th-year senior that's already 25 years old, so you would expect that, but he does a great job of sorting through quick game concepts. He'll connect to his assignment, get eyes on the quarterback, and time his break perfectly. He has really good eye balance as a free safety to read the route distribution, but key in on the quarterback's windup. On the back end, he just plays like someone that's seen every route concept before, and he knows how to diagnose and pass everything off. He's tall with a slender build and long arms. That length really comes in handy at the catch point, but he's a pretty average athlete. His acceleration is fine, but he does struggle if he has to run with someone deep down the field. When he's reading everything quickly, which he usually is, he can get there in time, but he doesn't have that last second closing burst to make up for coverage mistakes or to really bait the quarterback. There are some times where he'll kind of be playing the backside of a deep over route, and a more athletic safety would be able to play off and then undercut the passing lane once the quarterback throws it. But if he gives up 1.5 yards of separation and the receiver's running at full speed, he's not going to close that space. So I really like Josh Proctor's coverage IQ, but he's an older player, average athlete, and he's had an injury every season of his college career. My 12th ranked safety is Kiton Olapo out of Oregon State, 6'2", 216 pounds with long arms. He has the ideal size and frame for a box safety. He's fully committed in the run game, plays with a ton of physicality. He can stack and shed and play off of blocks. He has 4 career forced fumbles, including a touchdown saving chase down against Washington. He isn't a very fluid or reactive tackler in open space, but in the box at the line of scrimmage, he has everything that you look for. In coverage, he does a lot of things at a high level. There are just some athletic limitations. He ran a 4.58, which is 38th percentile, doesn't really have the range to play free safety. When he's an off man, he will get stacked vertically, but he has really good ball skills. He's got 18 pass breakups and 3 interceptions in the past 3 seasons. Check out his game against Stanford. It's one of the best individual performances from this safety class. He had 2 interceptions, and then he forced another one with a pass breakup. He's got the length and the soft hands to be a ball hawking safety in the intermediate game. And then despite not having the elite range, he actually has loose hips to stick with route breaks, and he's really decisive reading route combinations in zone coverage. So the more I think about it, he's basically like Trey Taylor out of Air Force, just a little bit better in every area, but they have a pretty similar strengths and weaknesses profile. My 11th safety is Jaylen Simpson out of Auburn. This is another converted cornerback that's new to the position. He moved to safety in the middle of the 2022 season, so about a year and a half of experience at safety, and he would be one of the lightest safeties in NFL history. He's 5'11 and a half, 179 pounds, but he has really good speed and elite explosiveness. Outside of Tyler Owens, he's probably the most explosive safety in this class. He just fires out of his back pedal, has immediate downhill acceleration to break on the ball. He has good timing and coordination at the catch point. He does a great job playing the ball and not the receiver. He can reach into the receiver's catch space without drawing a penalty. And then I don't think he can play corner in the NFL, but for a safety, he's really good in man coverage. But most of his limitations just come back to size. He really just doesn't put up any resistance to blocks. If a blocker connects to him, they're going to drive him out of the play, and a lot of times on tape he ends up off the screen. He doesn't have much power as a tackler. He will frequently bounce off of tackle attempts, and he had some really good reps against Brock Bowers, but I think in tight man coverage situations against bigger tight ends he could struggle in the NFL. My 10th ranked safety is Dominique Hampton out of Washington. He is a built-in-a-lab safety with elite combine testing. He had the highest athletic score of any safety in this class, 6'2 and a half, 215 pounds, over 33-inch arms. He did every drill and was above 50th percentile in everything except the broad jump, which was 49th percentile. Now, I think on tape, he is a really good athlete, but doesn't have quite the elite athleticism that he showed at the combine. The one thing that does show up is the short shuttle and 3-cone. He can stick with route breaks and man coverage. He's really fluid transitioning and opening up his hips, and he has good build-up speed, but it is kind of a prolonged gear up to that top speed. And then his click and close and acceleration, I think, are very average. When he's trying to break on something from a flat-footed stance, he kind of runs on the treadmill for a few steps before he really gets going. I think probably the best part of Dominique Hampton's tape is what he can do as a tight end eraser. He's got the length to play press coverage and just smother their releases, and he has enough speed to keep up with pretty much any tight end. In off-man coverage against receivers, like I said, he has the lateral twitch to stick with route breaks. If a receiver just runs 3 steps upfield and then cuts inside, he can cover that no problem, but he's very undisciplined when it comes to mirroring more complex routes and stems. He'll get stemmed into premature hip turns. He gave up a long play against Washington State as an example, and if the receiver's just zigzagging up the field, he's too high cut to mirror that, and he basically has to grab at the break point. In zone coverage, he rarely has any coverage busts. He's very alert processing route combinations, but again, he just doesn't have that elite explosiveness to really break on what he sees, so that kind of limits his playmaking potential. What was most disappointing about Dominique Hampton's tape, though, was the run defense. For a player of his size, you want him to be dominant in run support, and he was just fine. He doesn't really use his length to stack and shed blocks like he's physically capable of. His tackle strength was really disappointing. He gets trucked way too often for a player of his size. He gave up a touchdown against Texas where he made contact 4 yards from the goal line and just got trucked into the end zone. And then he's a very unreliable tackler. He takes cautious angles. He isn't proactive accelerating to the edge. And for a player that runs a 4.45, he just gets beat around the corner a lot more often than you'd expect. My 9th ranked safety is Kalin Bullock out of USC. He's probably the most boom bust safety in this class. Outside of the 6th and 7th round projects, like, he's the one that I could see being a top 5 safety or never seeing the field and being out of the league in a couple years. He's 6'2", 188 pounds with long arms, and he legitimately moves around the field like a cornerback. I've actually heard people that are plugged in say that a lot of NFL teams view him as a corner. He has 9 interceptions and 15 pass breakups in his career at USC. He's got the range to be a single high safety. He has the length to disrupt at the catch point. He had a pretty disappointing vertical and broad jump, but I was really impressed with his short area burst on tape. All of the natural coverage movement skills, Kalin Bullock has that, but I think he's lacking in basically everything else. In coverage, he's lacking pattern match awareness and route recognition recognition. There's so many blown coverages on his tape. He's given up 9 touchdowns in the last 2 seasons. He could have easily given up like 15. He makes instinctive plays on the ball, but I just don't think he's reading the game at a high level on a snap-to-snap basis. He takes terrible tackling angles. He's the opposite of a safety blanket on the back end. The 9 touchdowns that he's given up doesn't include all the times that he blows an angle and run support and gives up an 80-yard touchdown. Now, he doesn't shy away from contact. He's willing to throw his body into traffic and be physical as a run defender, but at 188 pounds, he just can't play off of blocks and keep his footing through contact. Unless he can add some weight, he's a deep safety only, and even there, he'll make some plays on the ball, but I don't trust him to be reliable in coverage snap after snap. We're now into the top 100 with my 8th ranked safety, Malik Mustafa out of Wake Forest. He's one of my favorite players in this class to watch. He is a ferocious tackler, elite stopping power, consistent wrap-up technique. He drives through contact and makes his target feel it. He has a very unconventional build for a safety. He's 5'10" with just over 30-inch arms, but 209 pounds. So he has enough bulk, he just doesn't have ideal length. He had a 41.5-inch vertical, and that absolutely shows up on film. He's got a sudden plant and drive. His downhill acceleration is top tier, but he isn't just a stiff, straight line athlete. He has really surprising fluidity, especially in his back pedal. He's able to get so much depth, weave, sink to the post. He had a rep against Florida State where he just backpedaled to a post route and then reached up and got the pass breakup. But there are still some athletic limitations and some skill development that needs to happen for him to really be a high quality starter. So his recovery speed is just average. He's not someone that's going to be a free safety that can cover sideline to sideline. There's plenty of plays on tape where he reads it on time. He just can't get over to the sideline quickly enough. And then his lack of height and arm length makes it kind of difficult for him to win at the catch point. He can get bodied by tight ends and bigger receivers. The 2022 matchup against Clemson, he just got bullied by Davis Allen in the red zone. So the average speed and below average size are really the 2 athletic limitations with Malik Mustafa, but he also still needs to develop his anticipation and coverage instincts. He does this weird technique where he'll just open up his hips to one side of the field, and it restricts his field vision so much. So that's partially responsible for him not reading route concepts as effectively as he should, but he's also not that instinctive recognizing like backside dig routes. He had multiple plays where he was the robber safety against a dagger concept, and he just couldn't identify the dig route quickly enough. He was in good position, but just gave it way too much space. But if you can get him to see the field a little better, I think he has true Pro Bowl potential. I know that's a lot easier said than done, but the upside with Malik Mustafa is definitely there. My 7th safety is a player that started off the year as a potential first rounder, and that's Cam Kinchens out of Miami. He's an absolute ball hawk, 11 interceptions in the past 2 seasons. Now, a couple of those were like tip passes or stuff that went right to him, but the vast majority are high quality interceptions. He's anticipating and undercutting a route. He's making a play from single high all the way to the sideline. If you just watch Cam Kinchens' 15 best plays, he looks like a first round pick. The problem is that he's just so undisciplined and unreliable in coverage. He allowed 8 receptions of 20 plus yards last year, and he gets beat in pretty much every way. He'll stare into the backfield and lose track of leak routes or play action. He'll inexplicably just abandon his coverage assignment and guess, hunting for a big play. His route recognition is very up and down. He'll leave a simple 2-man concept uncovered. In short yardage, he can get manipulated by misdirection and motion. Really every aspect of being a steady, reliable presence on the back end, Cam Kinchens is lacking. He's also an unreliable tackler. He takes wild angles in open space. He does have some big hits on tape, and he's an aggressive run defender, but then he'll also get trucked in the open field by a tight end. And then on top of that, he's just an average athlete. The 1.53 10-yard split is good, but 4.6 in the 40, 35-inch vertical is 42nd percentile, and then his broad jump was one of the shortest in combine history, 0.2 percentile. I felt like on tape, the one thing he was really lacking is the recovery speed. I think he has enough plant and drive explosion to get where he's trying to go as long as he's seeing everything correctly, but the reactive athleticism and makeup speed is really lacking with Cam Kinchens. My 6th ranked safety is Tyrique Smith out of Georgia. He's 5'10", 202 pounds, and pound for pound, he's one of the most physical players in this class. He's an absolutely dominant block shedder. I've never seen a player at his size eviscerate blocks in the alley so consistently. On screens, tosses, outside runs, he's firing into contact. He almost always at least disengages from the block, but he's got so many reps where he's putting tight ends that weigh 50 pounds more than him on their back. If I was a coach or GM at the combine and I was interviewing a player like Jaylen Carli, Tyler Owens, Dominique Hampton, I would just put on Tyrique Smith tape and ask them, why does your tape not look like this? So Tyrique Smith played mostly in the slot and the Brian Branch type of role for Georgia's defense, and he was an excellent run defender, great at shedding blocks. He's really fluid in man coverage. He does a great job of reading the receiver's body language. He has good composure and route anticipation from trail technique. He faced a lot of slot fades, and he has really fluid hips, turning and accelerating down the field, but his top speed is just average. I think in the NFL, he will struggle and get stacked by true deep threats from the slot. He ran a 4.46 at Georgia's Pro Day, but that didn't really show up on tape. I think his tackling balance and angles were kind of inconsistent, although it did improve as the season went on. Overall, Tyrique Smith is not a great athlete. He's not very big. He's just a really, really good football player. The NFL is a bigger, stronger, faster league, but I don't think Tyrique Smith is a limited enough athlete that he can't have success. My 5th ranked safety is DAndre Taylor out of Texas Tech. He had the second fastest 40-yard dash in this class at 4.41. Also had a 1.54 10-yard split and a 38-inch vertical. He is 5'10", 197 pounds with just under 31-inch arms. So he has the speed and the movement skills, but not the ideal bulk and arm length. I think Taylor Dimerson's a player that has some size limitations in the run game, but does a good job of offsetting that with what he can control. And then in coverage, he has all the natural ability that you could want. He's just a little bit rough around the edges at this point. So he has the speed and acceleration. When he reads and reacts, he can close space quickly and maximize playmaking opportunities. If he's playing the deep half in cover 2, he can afford to break on a corner route at a really sharp angle so that he's actually undercutting the throw. Players with more limited speed that can't get there as quickly, they might have to shade at a more conservative angle to stay over the top, but Dimerson can just plant and accelerate directly towards the ball. And there were flashes on tape of him reading things top down, sorting through route combos efficiently, but I still think the pattern recognition skills and coverage awareness needs a good amount of development at this point, and it does make him somewhat of a boom bust prospect. He's a player where it's kind of hard to tell if he's just starting to put things together or if he's just inconsistent overall. Sometimes he does a good job of reading the receiver and the quarterback simultaneously. Other times it seems like he needs to see the quarterback wind up to break on a route. Against Kansas, he showed the ability to bite on play action and then quickly identify his assignment and recover down the field. He had 3 examples of that on the Kansas tape, including a crazy one-handed interception. But then other times he'll bite on play action and have a really difficult time relocating his assignment. The bowl game against Cal, there's a couple good examples of that. Based on the flashes, you can tell he has the natural talent. He just needs to get more consistent with his route recognition to limit big plays that he gives up and maximize his ability to take away the ball. When it comes to his ball skills, that's also a mixed bag. He has 10 interceptions in the last 3 seasons. He has some really impressive breaks and really impressive catches on tape, but he also has 8 dropped interceptions over the last 3 years. And you can go to like the TCU game where he had 2 interceptions. I think they need to check the TCU quarterback's FanDuel account because he tried to throw Dimerson about 4 and he ended up dropping a couple, just letting them slip through his hands. When he tracks the ball, he can be really disruptive at the catch point and rake it out of the receiver's hands, but he has a hard time decelerating with underthrown passes and finding the ball when the receiver's undercutting him. So I don't think his coverage issues are as extreme as players like Cam Kitchens and Kalin Bullock, but he does need to clean it up and limit some of the mistakes. At safety 4, I've got Cole Bishop out of Utah, 6'2", 206 pounds, but under 30-inch arms, 5th percentile arm length. He's a player that really helped his stock at the combine. He ran a 4.45 in the 40-yard dash, 39-inch vertical, and he has a lot of similarities to a player like DAndre Taylor Dimerson. He has the range to cover sideline to sideline. He's got outstanding closing bursts, especially driving on in-breaking routes. When he can line up his path and just break on a dig route, he gets there in the blink of an eye. He has really good man coverage skills. He's got the play strength to match up with tight ends. He's got the speed to match up with slot receivers. In off-man coverage, he has excellent route anticipation. He's got a lot of plays where he's breaking before the receiver just by reading their path and reading the stem, but he doesn't have great discipline in zone coverage, and his ball skills are very disappointing. As a zone coverage defender, I think the real differentiating factor with Cole Bishop is whether something's developing in front of him or behind him. He can crash on routes as a robber safety. You see multiple examples on tape of him diagnosing mesh concepts concepts and passing it off perfectly. As long as everything's developing within his field of vision, he's very instinctive, but he's extremely unaware of routes that are developing behind his back in zone coverage. If he's in a hook zone and you run a dig route behind him, he's just gonna stand in place and leave a wide open passing lane. He also doesn't have good eye balance. He's just following the quarterback's eyes and going wherever he takes him. A savvy quarterback can widen him out of hook zones. He'll get manipulated and led into poor angles versus in-breaking routes. He's got to learn to multitask and kind of expand what he's looking at. There were a few times he had a miscommunication against vertical switch concepts and left open routes down the field. And he also has a tendency to fixate on action that's going on in the backfield, and he'll miss his assignment versus play action and trick plays, reverses, stuff like that. So it's a common theme, but Cole Bishop's another player where I just don't trust his processing and zone coverage. And then his ball skills left a lot to be desired. I talked about how aggressive he is breaking on dig routes over the middle of the field, but he's just looking to blow stuff up. There were multiple plays where he could have realistically had an interception if he tried to play the ball, but he's just looking to make contact. When he's running downfield at full speed, he has a hard time turning and locating the football. He'll let it just drop into the receiver's hands when he was in good position. And then having really short arms just makes everything more difficult when it comes to playing the ball. All right, I have a clear top 3 in this safety class. As with most positions, it depends what exactly you're looking for your scheme, so the order is not very rigid. But my third ranked safety is going to be Javon Bullard out of Georgia. The main thing he brings to the table is anticipation, instincts, and being able to read and react and make plays on the ball. He does an outstanding job reading route concepts. He's frequently breaking before the quarterback even gets into his windup. He takes good angles to break on routes and was really productive at the catch point. In his 2 years as a starter, he had 4 interceptions and 10 pass breakups. He's extremely fluid moving laterally. He can play man coverage. He sticks tight to the route break. He had a 3.97 short shuttle, which is 98th percentile, but he's not that explosive moving in a straight line. He relies on his anticipation and instincts to make early breaks on the pass. Another Georgia DB that ran a 4.47, but I don't really think that speed showed up on tape. And then in the run game, he's extremely aggressive and physical, but he just has some size limitations like we've discussed with a lot of these players. He isn't really able to shed blocks. He has to avoid them, which isn't always possible. He'll get trucked every now and then in short yardage situations, and then he's a big game hunter as a tackler. He'll make some really impressive plays in the backfield, but there's also a lot of diving out of control tackle attempts, and he doesn't have very long arms to give him that margin for error. At safety 2, I've got Tyler Nuban out of Minnesota. A ton of ball production, 13 interceptions and 13 pass breakups for his career. He's just so instinctive jumping routes, especially in breakers from the backside. In terms of processing and anticipation, he's as good as it gets in this class. I really see him as like a bigger, slower version of Javon Bullard. If you're valuing more of a box safety that's a secure wrap-up tackler, can play off of blocks, Tyler Nuban's probably your guy in this range. But if you want someone with more speed on the back end, then Javon Bullard's probably your guy. Tyler Nuban is lacking in range and recovery speed. He rarely makes coverage mistakes, but when he does, he's unable to get back into position. And he didn't play a lot of man coverage at Minnesota, probably for a reason. I don't think he really projects as being able to do that in the NFL. Not only is he kind of lacking in speed, but the change of direction skills are also pretty limited. And then my top safety is Jaden Hicks out of Washington State. What sets him ahead of Tyler Nuban and Javon Bullard is that he actually has size and speed. He's 6'2", 211 pounds, decent arm length, ran a 4.5 flat at Washington State's Pro Day. He also had solid numbers in the 3-cone and vertical jump. I don't watch Jaden Hicks and see him as this elite athlete. He's just an NFL caliber mover. He can stick with slot fades and man coverage. He's comfortable locating and high pointing the ball with his back to the quarterback. He is more of a linear athlete than someone like Javon Bullard. He's not going to be as fluid changing directions and sticking with receivers and man coverage. He can cover most things on the vertical plane, but I'm not sure he's like a versatile do-it-all safety. He's got the closing burst to run sideline to sideline against perimeter run plays, but he takes really bad angles as a tackler and is just not consistent in that area. Out of my top 3 safeties, I would definitely say Jaden Hicks is the worst from that group. And then the other thing that kind of evens him out with Nuban and Bullard is that I don't think Hicks processes the game nearly as quickly as they do. He'll have some coverage busts against play action, and he didn't make as many instinctive plays in zone coverage as they did. But he's still a young player, and he's definitely got the traits to develop that aspect of his game. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy the video, make sure to like and subscribe. These videos are the culmination of hundreds of hours of film study and writing up reports, so a like is very much appreciated. appreciated. If you want to see my full draft board as an interactive filterable table, I've got that up at atozsports.com. The link to that is in the description. You can see all of my scouting reports, consensus big board, athletic testing percentiles. All the information that you see in this video is packed into a single draft tool. And make sure to join me for the first 2 days of the draft. I'll be doing a live stream on this channel breaking down every single pick. Excited to interact with y'all and go back and forth in the chat.